What if 30 days could decide the fate of a nation? At first light in Ouagadougou, rows of buses wait with their engines humming clouds of red dust curling under their wheels. On the platform, the air is thick with the mixed scent of diesel sweat and anticipation. 60,000 young men and women, some clutching worn backpacks, others balancing plastic buckets, are about to vanish from the comfort of home for an entire month. This is not a school trip. It is the first National Patriotic Immersion, a bold chapter in President Ibrahim Traoré's progressive and popular revolution. For 30 days, these fresh graduates will train, work, and live together, no phones, no distractions, only the discipline of unity and the reality of a country under siege in the Sahel. Burkina Faso has been here before. From the defiance of anti-colonial fighters to the hunger strikes of students demanding justice, the nation's history has been shaped by the courage of its youth. But never on this scale, never with a vision so clear, build citizens as strong as the army itself. If your country called you to trade comfort for duty, just for 30 days, would you rise? The answer in Burkina Faso is already in motion. The buses begin to roll out of Ouagadougou on the morning of August 10th, 2025. Their destination is not a single camp, but dozens of sites scattered across the 13 regions of Burkina Faso. Converted schools, community centers, and training grounds, each prepared to welcome a tide of young graduates. The scale alone feels almost unreal. 60,000 participants dispatched like seeds to every corner of the nation, from the dusty Sahel in the far north to the green, rain-fed valleys of the southwest. All of it unfolds under the authority of Presidential Decree 2025-0780, a legal mandate that makes this far more than a ceremonial event. It is compulsory, a pledge every graduate must fulfill before taking the next step in life. At the Ouagadougou bus station, the scene is both chaotic and deeply human. Nafissatou Ilbudo sits on a low stool, tucking a borrowed raincoat into the side pocket of her bag. She calls it a chance to reconnect with who we are, her voice carrying both excitement and concern. Ayette Cabaret checks the stack of notebooks she insists on bringing, convinced that this will teach us how a good citizen behaves. Fauci Aguigma laces her shoes with trembling fingers, half laughing, when she admits, "I am a little scared." In another corner, Axel Nikia already talks about starting a small agribusiness after the program, while Sadek Parka stands quietly thanking President Traore for the challenge. Each face holds its own story, but all eyes are turned toward the same horizon. Beyond the bus station, preparations have been in motion for months. Traoré's government has framed this immersion as part of the progressive and popular revolution launched on April 6, 2025, a broader transformation that includes nationalizing key resources, canceling billions in foreign debt, and building what he calls a people's defense network. The idea is simple but radical. The survival of Burkina Faso cannot depend solely on soldiers. Every educated young person must be ready to serve, lead, and protect. That readiness is not only physical, it is cultural, historical, and economic. Alongside military-style discipline, the immersion folds in vocational skills, training a parallel track announced on June 14, 2025, aimed at feeding the country's industrial push. In practice, this means the 30 days ahead will be a tapestry of different chapters. Mornings begin with the national anthem as the sun lifts over the compound, followed by physical training laps around dusty fields, push-ups stretching not to prepare for combat but to build stamina and test limits. Mid-mornings bring lessons in history and civic duty, led by veterans who remember the country's fight for independence and historians who map pre-colonial kingdoms with chalk and passion. Afternoons turn into a living exchange of Burkina Faso's diversity drumming from one region meets the weaving traditions of another. Students swap foods, languages, and stories, melting away old stereotypes. Later, the work turns practical, repairing rural classrooms, clearing drainage ditches, planting trees, or learning first aid. Each site is designed as a microcosm of the nation. A boy from the arid north, bunking beside a girl from the lush southwest, an urban graduate sharing chores with a farmer's son. The mix is deliberate to dissolve ethnic, regional, and class divides, not through speeches, but through shared sweat and daily cooperation. As the buses carry the last groups out of the capital, parents wave from the roadside, some smiling with pride, others wiping away tears. For many of these young people, it will be their first time sleeping far from family. The next 30 days promise to reshape them in ways neither they nor their loved ones can fully predict. The air inside each bus is thick with unspoken questions. Will the food be enough? Will the rains flood their training grounds? Will the bonds they form survive the return to normal life? Outside the windows, the familiar cityscape gives way to open land, then to villages, then to the long, empty stretches of road that lead into the country's heart. Somewhere along that journey, the excitement begins to quiet, replaced by a collective awareness the immersion has already begun long before they arrive. And in just a few hours, as they step off those buses into unfamiliar courtyards, they will see for themselves what this national furnace truly feels like. But what exactly awaits them beyond the horizon? Dawn in a small provincial town. The mist still clings to the ground as the first notes of the national anthem rise from the courtyard of a converted school. 60 young voices joined by 60 more, then hundreds swell together until the sound spills over the walls into the waking streets. Hands rest firmly on hearts. Some eyes are shut in concentration. Others fixed on the flag climbing slowly into the pale pink sky. In that moment, the faces are no longer strangers from different provinces. They are one. The day begins with movement. Instructors, some in crisp military uniforms, others in plain sportswear, lead warm-ups across the courtyard. Shoes pound against the packed earth breaths fall into rhythm. It is not about creating soldiers. It is about learning to push through the point where the body says stop and the mind answers one more step. Laughter and groans mix as they run stretch and lift. Water breaks are brief, the pace relentless. By the time breakfast is served, steaming millet porridge, peanuts, sweet tea, the morning heat has already arrived. Classrooms follow. An elderly veteran stands before the group, his back straight despite the years, his voice deep and unwavering. He does not recite dates. He tells of nights hiding in the bush during the independence struggle, of friends lost, of victories carved from nothing but determination. A historian unrolls a large map of pre-colonial kingdoms, tracing the routes of trade caravans, the rise and fall of rulers. Students lean forward, some scribbling notes, others just listening. A few glance at each other and smile, realizing for the first time that their personal histories are threads in the same national fabric. Afternoons bring the heartbeat of the immersion living Burkina Faso's diversity. In one corner, drums echo from a group practicing traditional rhythms. Across the yard, hands move deftly over a loom, weaving bright patterns into cloth. A student from the dry north takes his first bite of a spicy southern stew, coughing as the heat hits his tongue, then laughing with the girl who served it. These are quiet victories breaking down the invisible walls between regions, tribes, and languages. Later work turns physical. A group repairs the crumbling wall of a rural classroom, mixing cement under the guidance of a local mason. Another team clears a drainage channel before the rainy season floods the village. In a nearby farming plot, students who have only known textbooks bend to pull weeds, their hands blackened with soil. The instructors remind them these are not chores. They are lessons in ownership. You leave a place better than you found it. By evening, the focus shifts to survival skills. Under a tin roof shelter, an instructor shows how to purify water using simple tools. Another demonstrates first aid for injuries that can happen during floods or storms. The message is clear in a land where outside help often comes too late. Self-reliance is not optional. The weekends with something new, a session on vocational skills tied to the government's industrial plan. A young woman in work overalls sketches a machine part on the chalkboard, explaining how local manufacturing could replace imports. The link is deliberate. Patriotism is not only defense, it is building an economy strong enough to stand without foreign crutches. President Traoré's June announcement of a nationwide vocational training push is taking shape here in dusty yards and makeshift workshops. And then comes the moment that will stay with them. One evening, as the sun sinks low and paints the sky gold, a sudden downpour drenches the compound. Instead of scattering for shelter, the participants gather in the open, laughing as the rain soaks their uniforms. Someone starts clapping in rhythm. Another adds a chant, and soon the entire group is moving together, a storm-drenched choir of youth who only days ago were strangers. It is here in the beating of drums through the rain, in the mud-slicked smiles, that the transformation becomes visible. They are not just enduring the program, they are claiming it. But beyond the camaraderie, a question begins to take shape. Can this unity survive the challenges waiting just beyond these gates? The first week feels like a surge of energy, but reality has a way of testing even the brightest momentum. In the northern province of Soum, a headmaster walks through an empty dormitory counting the beds. There are enough for barely half the group scheduled to arrive tomorrow. In the south, a truck loaded with sacks of rice stalls on a road half swallowed by floodwater. The driver steps out, rain dripping from his hat, and shakes his head. There is no guarantee he will make it through before nightfall. Feeding, housing, and training 60,000 young people scattered across 13 regions is like running a city stretched thin across an entire country. Every site needs clean water, working toilets, kitchens capable of producing hundreds of meals a day. In some remote areas, those basics simply do not exist. And then there is the weather. This year, the rains come heavy and hard, turning open fields into lakes, washing out dirt roads, and forcing last-minute cancellations of outdoor drills. The strain is not just physical. In regions still under the shadow of armed groups, the arrival of large youth gatherings brings added security risks. The state deploys gendarmes and local defense units to guard the perimeters, but the awareness of danger hums quietly in the background. For many participants, this is their first time sleeping far from family. Shared dormitories, strict schedules, and constant group work can overwhelm those used to the comfort of home. Whispers of homesickness, fatigue, and quiet frustration drift through the camp at night. Then there is the personal cost. Even with state funding, families are expected to provide essentials: a mat to sleep on, a bucket for washing, sturdy shoes for drills. For households already stretched thin, these are not small expenses. Nafisatu's earlier plea for government-issued rain gear is echoed in many homes. If we are all equal here, let us all start with the same chance, one parent says. But the response is as much about spirit as logistics. Textile factories donate uniforms and raincoats, easing the financial load. The Ministry of Youth sets up regional supply hubs so food and equipment can be stored closer to where they are needed, cutting reliance on long flood-prone routes. Schedules flex with the weather. Stormy days move indoors for history lessons or skill workshops. Clear days return to physical training. Diaspora networks send funds to cover missing gear, while local businesses pitch in with tools, building materials, and even fuel for generators. Some of the most effective solutions come from the participants themselves. In one flood-hit site, a group of trainees joins local residents to dig a new drainage channel, laughing as the mud splashes their faces. In another, a shortage of chairs turns into a carpentry workshop within days, with enough seats built for every student. What began as an obstacle becomes a lesson in resourcefulness. You do not wait for rescue. You act, you adapt, you own the outcome. Even security challenges are met with ingenuity. At one camp in the east, where insurgent activity had been reported weeks earlier, participants take part in night watch rotations alongside local defense volunteers. The experience is sobering, not the romantic idea of patriotism in the safety of daylight, but the cold reality of a country still under threat. The most profound change comes quietly. A student from the city, used to flicking a light switch, without thought, now walks each evening with a lantern, conserving every drop of kerosene. Another, who had never touched a farming tool, now wakes early to water seedlings planted by her team. These small acts are not on any official schedule, but they are shaping the very habits Traore envisioned. A citizenry trained not just to endure, but to take initiative. By the third week, the rain has eased. The supply lines run smoother, and the rhythm of the immersion feels less like a trial and more like a shared life. Yet everyone knows these 30 days are finite. Soon the buses will return to carry them back to their old streets, their old rooms, their old routines. The question no one says aloud is the one that hangs over every evening campfire when they leave here. Will they carry this discipline, this unity, into the restless world outside? Word of the National Patriotic Immersion does not stay within Burkina Faso's borders. In Bamako and Niamey, government envoys quietly watch, sending observers to see firsthand what 60,000 disciplined young people look like when deployed in every corner of a country. The reports they carry back to Mali and Niger are not about parades or speeches, but about how a boy from the Sahel now knows the customs of the lush Southwest, how a girl from the city can build a bench from scratch. The unspoken question in both capitals is the same: could this work here? Inside the Alliance of Sahel States, talk begins of a shared civilian core, a regional network of trained youth who can respond to floods, droughts, or insurgent threats without waiting for foreign aid or mercenary contracts. It is a vision that challenges decades of dependency, the belief that African security and resilience must come packaged with foreign flags. In Western capitals, the reaction is more cautious. The United States has not made a public statement on the program, but analysts in policy circles note the political signal it sends, mobilizing tens of thousands without a single Western donor. It is not only a logistical achievement, it is a statement of sovereignty. Some see it as a bold step towards self-reliance, others as a potential shift in regional alliances away from long-standing Western influence. For many in Africa's diaspora, the program becomes a point of pride. Social media groups buzz with clips of drenched trainees singing in the rain of students, repairing village schools of flags rising at dawn. Donations come in uniforms, boots, rain gear, not from governments, but from ordinary people who see in these faces a reflection of their own history, the struggles their parents and grandparents once faced. Even within Burkina Faso's borders, the program sparks conversations that reach beyond patriotism. University professors debate whether this model could transform education itself, shifting it from a purely academic path to one rooted in civic responsibility and practical skills. Rural elders speak of a renewed sense of unity, something they feared had been lost to political division and economic hardship. But the global spotlight comes with its own weight. Insecurity still stalks parts of the Sahel. Climate shocks grow sharper each year. For all the chants, drills, and lessons, the real test will not be what happens inside the camps. It will be what happens when these young people step back into a country still in the crosshairs of multiple crises. And beyond the praise or the doubt, one question remains: can this seed of unity grow fast enough to outpace the storms gathering over the Sahel? By the final week, the structure of the National Patriotic Immersion is no longer just a schedule. It is a habit. Wake at dawn, move with purpose, think as a team. The immediate success is visible participants who arrived shy now lead group projects. Those who once bristled at discipline now enforce it among their peers. But the larger question is, what happens when these habits are released into the nation's bloodstream? In the short term, the program strengthens local resilience. Communities gain young citizens who know how to organize relief during floods, repair infrastructure, and mediate disputes before they spiral. Inter-regional friendships chip away at the tribal and regional divides that armed groups have exploited for years. With 60,000 graduates each year, the network of trained youth could within a decade reach more than 500,000, a force that may never hold a rifle, but could hold a country together. Longer term, the integration of vocational training signals a deeper play. The June 14th Industrial Skills Initiative means that graduates do not return home only with patriotism, but with employable skills, carpentry mechanics, agriculture, water management. This directly feeds President Traoré's vision of an economy that can stand without leaning on imports or foreign consultants. If successful, it could slow the rural exodus, create local jobs, and undercut one of the root causes of instability: poverty. Regionally, the idea of an alliance civilian corps could shift the balance of power in the Sahel. If Mali and Niger adopt similar programs, the three countries could field a civilian response network larger than many standing armies, one trained not for war, but for the kind of peace that requires constant maintenance. The potential is enormous, but so is the risk. Without sustained resources, political will, and public trust, the momentum could fade into nostalgia. The immersion could be remembered as a powerful experiment that failed to take root, or as the spark that lit a lasting transformation. And as the last week draws to a close, one truth becomes clear: the buses that will carry them home are not taking them back to the lives they left. They are taking them forward into a test the world will be watching. But will Burkina Faso's boldest experiment prove it can outlast the storms ahead? The final morning comes quietly. The air is cool, the sky pale with first light. In each camp, young men and women fold their uniforms, pack their buckets, and roll up the mats that have been their beds for the last 30 days. They move slower than they did on the first day, not from fatigue, but from a quiet reluctance to leave. At the flagpole, the anthem rises one last time. The voice is stronger now, carrying the weight of days lived shoulder to shoulder. Around them, the walls they repaired stand firm. The gardens they planted begin to sprout. The classrooms they painted glow in the morning sun. These are tangible traces of their presence, but the deeper marks are invisible, the reflex to step forward when something needs doing. The habit of thinking, we before I, the certainty that they can endure more than they once believed. This is the quiet power President Ibrahim Traoré sought when he launched the National Patriotic Immersion, a generation forged in unity, trained in resilience, armed with both skill and purpose. It is the same current that has run through Burkina Faso's history, from the defiance of anti-colonial fighters to the voices that rose against injustice in the streets. Today, it has a new face, young and unshakable. The world may measure the program in statistics: 60,000 trained, 13 regions covered 1 month of service. But the real measure will be taken in the years ahead, when floods come, when markets falter, when conflict threatens. Then we will see whether these graduates rise without waiting for orders, whether they stand where others might retreat. For the African diaspora watching this is more than a national program. It is a living proof that unity can be built, not borrowed. That AA people can write their future without asking for permission. So the question is not only for Burkina Faso. It is for all of us. If your homeland called on you to give 30 days to work, to learn to protect, to build, would you rise? Share your truth. Because history is not written only by those in power, but by those willing to stand when the moment arrives.